My name is Julia, 27 years old. I work at a small interior design firm in Seattle, busy demanding yet a constant source of fulfillment. It's the only aspect of my life I have any say over the rest. A voice barely audible under the weight of my family's expectations. My sister Melissa, 4 years older, married with triplets, is the sun, and the rest of us revolve around her. At least that's how it feels. As for me, I'm the backup plan, the unpaid nanny when my sisters overwhelm the last-minute fill-in when everyone else's lives take precedence. Last year, I thought things might be different. I looked forward to our family vacation on the Oregon coast. A trip I had long dreamed of. I'd requested time off months in advance, counting the days until I could escape to the beach, sip coffee in cozy seaside cafes, and finally see an art exhibit I'd missed for years. My mom promised me this trip would be different. This time I would actually get to relax. But as soon as I arrived, my illusion shattered. The room assignments, Melissa and her husband in their own suite with an ocean view balcony, left me standing stunned. I was to share a room with her 3 6-year-old sons. Barely had time to process it before my mom handed me the key, smiling that smile that only mothers can manage. "The boys love you, Julia," she said. "They won't be any trouble." No trouble. And so the vacation began. The first night, one of the boys cried because he couldn't find his teddy bear. The second ran in frantic circles, searching for the TV remote, and the third asked me 5 times if he could have a snack. At midnight, after hours of wrangling with restless children, I finally collapsed onto the bed. The room was pitch black, save for the sound of little snores and heavier breaths. I couldn't escape the noise, the chaos, the sense that no matter how much I tried to carve out my own space, it was always filled by someone else's needs. The next morning, my one escape, the art exhibit I'd dreamed of seeing, was snatched away. As I put on my shoes, ready to finally take the walk, I had envisioned my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Where are you going? Josh is about to head out. Can you watch the kids for a bit?" A bit turned into 3 hours. I didn't even argue. Well, what was the point? When I mentioned it to my mom later, her reply was the same. "You're staying for free, sweetie? It's only fair. You help out a little." Help out. I wasn't mooching. I paid for my own bus ticket. I took PTO just to be here. But when I tried to push back, when I tried to make my voice heard, I was met with disapproving stares. It felt like I wasn't even seen, just a shadow on the periphery of their picture-perfect family. I spent most of the trip picking up cookie crumbs, changing the kids' clothes, answering their endless stream of questions. "Aunt Julia, can I didn't even make it to the beach until the very last day." Meanwhile, Melissa posted photos of herself at spas, cafes, and foot massage parlors, living the vacation she had promised me. I just packed up my things in silence when it was all over. And as I walked away from the family, I promised myself never again. But now, another trip looms. The itinerary arrived in the family group chat today, and as I looked at it, my hands trembled. Do they really think I'll just slip right back into the same role I started typing? This time, I wouldn't stay silent. I wouldn't let myself be swept along. As I stared at the message from my mom, her words felt like they were suffocating me. "This year's trip will be so much fun. Julia, you're riding with us again, right? I've booked 2 rooms, one for the kids, one for us." I took a deep breath and replied, "Thanks, Mom, but this year, I'll be driving myself. I've already booked my own room." The phone rang before I could set it down. My mom's voice came through tight with confusion. "Julia, what are you saying? Why book your own room? I've already arranged everything." I swallowed the frustration building in my chest. "Mom, I want my own space. Last year, I barely had a minute to myself. I need a real vacation." There was a long silence, then her voice quieter now, as though she'd lost some of her steam. "But that means you're separating from the family. Melissa will have to handle the kids on her own. Who's going to help when she needs a break?" I took a breath. "I'm not the nanny, Mom. I work, I earn my own money. I'm an adult, and this time, I'm not repeating last year's mistake. Later that night, I got a text from Melissa. It was long, emotional, laced with guilt. She said she was overwhelmed, tired, and felt betrayed that I wasn't stepping up like before. She reminded me I was single, childless. Helping out was, according to her, the least I could do. I didn't reply immediately. I needed to think, needed to keep my calm. But then I read the part where she wrote, "I just wanted us all to have a fun family vacation. And now you're acting like you've been deeply wronged." And that was it. I felt my resolve solidify. I wasn't acting like I'd been wronged. I had been wronged. This was my life, my time, and I wasn't going to let it slip away into the shadows of their demands. I put my phone down, feeling something snap inside me. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid to admit it. I was angry. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about something deeper. Something I had ignored for too long. The next few days passed in a blur, and then came the call from Dad. His tone wasn't angry, just concerns. "Are you really planning to go separately?" "Yes, Dad," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I booked a nearby hotel, a private room. I'll join the group activities, but the rest of the time, I want to decide for myself." I half expected him to try to convince me to plead with me to reconsider. Instead, he just sighed. "I get it," he said softly, as though he had already given up. 3 days later, Melissa's message appeared in the group chat. It was impossible to misread. "Have your personal vacation, Julia, but don't expect the family to be happy if you skip everything just because you want freedom. You don't get to do that." I didn't reply. Instead, I tightened the privacy settings on my hotel booking, creating another wall between me and the expectations they placed on me. I mapped out my entire itinerary. Something for me, a coastal craft workshop, a sunrise hike, and of course an afternoon spent at my favorite gallery. This time, the vacation wouldn't be about babysitting or swallowing my frustration. For once, I would take what I needed. I had spent my entire 20s trying to please others, keeping the peace, smoothing over their chaos, while my own needs were buried under layers of guilt and obligation. But this time, I wasn't going to play that role anymore. I was going to be heard. The night before departure, I received a final message from Mom. "We'll wait for you at the rest stop, just like planned, even if you're not riding with us. I hope you'll still come." I read the message in silence. It wasn't hate I felt for them, not exactly. It was more like resignation. I didn't hate them. I just refused to keep playing the role they had assigned me for years. I was tired of being the invisible one, the backup plan. At dawn, I left early. The air was cool, crisp, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sliver of peace. My suitcase sat neatly in the back seat, my favorite playlist softly playing through the speakers. I smiled for the first time in days. This trip was mine, not for anyone else, not to fulfill some unspoken family duty. This time, I would live every moment as me. But just as I checked into the hotel, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen. I already knew who it was. I took a deep breath and answered. "Where are you?" Melissa's voice was sharp, cold as steel. "I just checked in," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Private room, like I told you, private room." She laughed, but it wasn't the laugh of someone amused. It was bitter, cruel. "Julia, are you seriously doing this? Turning our family vacation into your own personal getaway?" "No," I said, my voice calm, steady. "I'm still joining the group activities, but I also have the right to rest in my own way." "I can't believe this," she snapped. "I'm juggling 3 kids. Josh is always on work calls, and Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger. Who do you think is going to help me if you just disappear like this?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. "Melissa, I'm not disappearing. I'm just not going to be your unpaid helper. Like last year, I'm not 19 anymore. But you're still single, she shot back, her voice growing more accusatory. No kids, no real responsibilities, just yourself. You have so much free time, Julia and I? I don't have the time. You think I do. I interrupted, my grip tightening on the phone. I have a job, a life. I need rest too. Melissa. For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then, her voice cracked. I'm exhausted, Julia. I haven't had a single night of decent sleep. You're free, you're relaxed, and I'm stuck in this endless cycle of fatigue, and you can't sacrifice even a little to help me. My heart sank, but I held firm. You chose motherhood. I respect that. But you can't expect me to sacrifice my life just because you're unhappy with the one you've chosen. So, it's all about you now? She asked, her voice low. No, I replied, my tone clear. It's about knowing my limits. I've learned that, if I don't protect them, no one else will. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone in my hand, my heart still racing. I knew this wasn't over. Melissa would tell Mom, and the storm was just beginning. Sure enough, an hour later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Mom. She wasn't yelling, but her disappointment was thick in her voice. Julia, what are you doing? Melissa is really hurt. Couldn't you be a little more flexible? I took a deep breath. Last year, I was as flexible as I could be. I gave up my time, my energy, my freedom. I didn't even sleep properly. And through it all, you never once asked if I was okay. You only asked if I could help Melissa. There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her processing my words. I love this family, but I'm tired of being the one everyone overlooks. If you only see me as a temporary fix for other people's problems, then I don't want that vacation. Mom sighed deeply. You've changed, Julia. I paused. I've grown up, Mom. I wasn't sure if they truly understood, or if they just thought I was rebelling. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't backing down. This was my life now, and for the first time, I wasn't going to let anyone else define it. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. No matter what came next, I was no longer the person who said yes just to keep the peace. That night, I stepped out alone onto the beach. The golden sunset painted the sky, and the ocean breeze tangled through my hair. In that moment, there was a strange, peaceful clarity that washed over me. I realized something deep inside. Yes, I might be upsetting people, but for the first time, I wasn't betraying myself. My own voice was rising above the din of family obligations. I'd spent years silencing it, saying yes when I wanted to say no, sacrificing my own needs to satisfy everyone else's. And this time, I refused to play that role. I never thought I'd share something personal online, especially not about my family. But after the phone call with Mom and Melissa's passive-aggressive texts, I felt suffocated, like my thoughts were being smothered by their expectations. I needed to say something, not to vent, but to clear my mind, to make sense of the frustration that had been building for so long. So, I created an anonymous Reddit account. I went to a casual life stories subreddit and wrote, I shared my experiences from last year. The exhausting vacation where I slept with 3 kids while my sister got a private room. How my family assumed I was available just because I wasn't married or a mom. I kept everything vague, no names, no locations, just the facts. At the end, I asked a simple question. Am I wrong for wanting a real vacation for myself? I never expected it to blow up. Within hours, there were hundreds of comments, most of them supportive. Some said I had been too patient. Others told me I should have drawn the line long ago. Many shared their own stories, stories of self-sacrifice being treated like duty and independence being seen as selfishness. I read each comment, feeling both relieved and heartbroken. relieved that I wasn't alone, and saddened that so many of us had been forced into side roles in our own lives. Then the last thing I expected happened. Melissa saw the post at 6:00 a.m. The next morning, my phone rang. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. I was sitting on my hotel balcony, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise when I answered. "Did you write that?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. I stayed calm, even as my pulse quickened. "You recognized it was me." "How could I not?" she snapped. "You think you're anonymous. You described everything in such detail. Who wouldn't know it was about me? I didn't name anyone," I replied, my voice steady. "But if you recognized it, maybe it's because it's the truth." She went quiet for a moment, and then the anger seeped in. "You made me a joke in front of thousands. Do you know how many people are calling me selfish?" Now, I didn't answer, because what she really cared about wasn't the truth. It was the way things looked. For her, it was always about image, about how things appeared to others. The truth, that didn't matter. 3 hours later, Mom called. I could hear the disappointment in her voice even before she spoke. "Did you really do that? You posted about our family online?" I typed back a reply. "Yes, Mom, because if I didn't speak up, no one would have listened." Her response came quickly, laced with anger. She called me ungrateful and said I hurt my sister. But then something changed. I could hear the shift in her tone as she began reading the comments on the post. By the time she called again, her voice was softer. "I didn't think people would see it that way," she admitted. "I thought you were exaggerating." "How many times have I exaggerated, Mom?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. But no one listened until someone else said it. The conversation hung in the air for a moment, but something had shifted. Maybe not entirely, but I felt like I had made myself heard. After that call, I didn't hear from Melissa. But then an unexpected message came through Josh, her husband. "I'm sorry for letting you be taken advantage of," he wrote. "I'm talking to Melissa. I think she needs to change." For the first time in years, I felt like someone in my family actually had my back. Not out of obligation, not for the sake of peace, but because they saw the truth. 2 days after my post went viral, Mom called again. Her message was short, heavy. "Julia, the vacation's canceled." I froze, a rush of emotions flooding through me. Part of me felt relief, but another part of me felt sadness. I had longed for a vacation of my own to reclaim my time. But instead of freedom, I had exposed the truth too loudly, too quickly. "Since your post," Mom continued, "Melissa hasn't really spoken to anyone. Josh got so upset he left to stay with his parents in Olympia. Your dad and we need time to reflect." One sentence told me everything I needed to know. This had escalated far more than I'd imagined. That evening, I received a message from Josh. It was simple, but unexpected. "I'd like to meet in person. Just you and me. Not through Melissa, not through your parents." For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the truth settling around me, not just from my family, but from myself. This was my life, my choices, and for once, I had nothing to apologize for. We met at a quiet cafe not far from my hotel. Josh arrived on time, his face worn, but his eyes clear. No hint of the awkward avoidance I used to see at family dinners. I could feel the weight of unspoken tension in the air, but something was different this time. As soon as he sat down, he spoke quietly. "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up." I didn't need to ask what he meant. The relief in his tone was evident, but his words hit me like a tidal wave. I knew Melissa had control issues, but I didn't realize she was locked in that pattern. I nodded silently. He didn't need to say it. I knew exactly what he meant. About the money, about everything. I don't blame you, I said softly. But it's hard to believe you didn't notice. Josh shook his head, a shadow of regret passing over his face. She told me she'd given you money. Even described it in detail, the cash in an envelope left on the kitchen counter. Every time I asked, she had an explanation. I let out a dry laugh, the bitterness in my voice, not quite masking the exhaustion. If there was an envelope, it must have been meant for someone else. He stared at me for a moment, processing what I had said before continuing. I checked the bank statements and asked Melissa directly. She admitted she only gave you money for pizza a couple of times, the rest she kept. I nodded. There was no anger left in me, just the hollow sting of disappointment. I know, I said quietly. I figured as much. Josh's voice softened. I love Melissa, Julia, but I won't let her walk all over you just because you don't speak up as much. I looked him straight in the eye, the weight of his words sinking deep. So what are you going to do? His gaze hardened, resolve solidifying in his features. Make her apologize properly and pay you back everything she owes. I didn't answer right away. Mom's words echoed in my head. In a family, we have to be the one who bends. I had spent my life bending for them, sacrificing pieces of myself, always told to put others first. But now, what I was doing wasn't about rebellion. It was about choosing to love myself, to stand firm. The next morning, Melissa showed up at my hotel. Her eyes were red, and in her hand was an envelope. Josh stood behind her, arms crossed, his presence solid as a rock. I'm sorry, she said, her voice so soft it was barely audible. For taking advantage of your kindness, for lying, for turning a family vacation into a stage to control you. I stayed silent, the air thick between us. She handed me the envelope. This is the money I owe you, every cent. Josh made me recalculate all of it. I didn't open the envelope. I just looked at her and asked the question that had been burning inside me for so long. Do you think things can ever go back to the way they were? She shook her head, a weary sadness in her eyes. No, and maybe that's a good thing. I felt the corners of my mouth twitch, unsure if it was a smile or something more bittersweet. It wasn't a victory. It was just the truth. I need help, she added, her voice quiet but clear. Josh asked me to start seeing a therapist. I agreed. I nodded slowly. I'm not sure I can fix everything, she added, her voice cracking. You don't have to fix everything in one day, I said softly. But if you can start by respecting other people, especially the quiet ones, that's already more than enough. For the first time, Melissa didn't look like the powerful older sister. She looked vulnerable, like a woman trying to find herself again after a long chain of mistakes. I realized in that moment that maybe, just maybe, the person she needed to find wasn't someone to control, but someone who could stand beside her, not beneath her. The vacation hadn't gone as planned, but it had given me something far greater than any beach party or sunset could offer. It had given me clarity. It had given Melissa a mirror to look into. And it had given my family a chance to change, or at the very least, to begin learning. 3 weeks after the vacation was canceled, I got a call from Dad. He didn't say much, just gently offered, Julia, your mom and I would like to take you out to dinner. Your favorite restaurant, The Pines, this Saturday. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded, even though they couldn't truly see me. Maybe after everything we all needed a dinner? With no arguing, no blame, just a fresh start. When I walked into the restaurant that evening, Mom stood up first and pulled out a chair for me. That had never happened before. Dad smiled awkwardly, like a small-town teacher who had just fumbled his lecture. We're sorry, Mom said, even before the appetizers arrived, for minimizing your feelings, for giving you burdens that were never yours to carry. I looked at her, and for the first time, she seemed smaller, not in stature, but in the way she spoke, from the heart, not from her role. She was just a mother now, not the matriarch she had always tried to be. Dad cleared his throat, his voice gentle. "We're planning another trip," he added. "This time, you can travel separately, stay separately, and join only the things you want to. No one will ask you to babysit." I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at them, the weight of everything that had happened settling over me. I had fought for my space, my boundaries. And for once, my family had heard me. They hadn't fully understood yet, but this was a start, and that was enough for me. "We promise." My mom's words hung in the air, soft but resolute. I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of hesitation. "What about Melissa?" Mom glanced at Dad, who remained quiet, his eyes thoughtful. Finally, she answered, her voice calm, but with a hint of vulnerability. "She's in counseling. Josh convinced her, and honestly, she's beginning to realize she needs to change." I didn't respond immediately. A part of me still feared that these promises would vanish like morning fog, dissipating with the first sign of tension. Years of compromises, shouldering responsibilities that weren't mine, had made me skeptical of change. But another part of me, however cautious, wanted to believe again, to trust that this time, things might be different. "All right," I said, my voice steady, but the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I'll go. But I'm driving myself, booking my own room, and if anyone tries to put me back in the aunt babysitter role, I'll leave." "No warning." Dad met my gaze and nodded slowly. "We understand." Mom gave a small, quiet nod. It was the first real acknowledgement I'd received in years. A week later, the family group chat came back to life. A new name appeared. Beach Trip Reset Version. The mood had lightened. Even Melissa sent smiley emojis. No directions, no demands. It was as if the air had cleared between us. Quietly, I booked a hotel half a mile from the main place, close enough for dinners, but far enough to have my own space. The morning of departure. I woke early, made coffee, packed my car, and left the city before sunrise. For the first time, no one called to rush me. No texts from Mom, asking, "Are you on your way?" No reminders from Melissa. It was as if they had finally accepted that I was my own person, making my own choices. When I arrived at the hotel, I checked in and asked the front desk not to share my room information with anyone except law enforcement in case of an emergency. The receptionist smiled kindly. "A lot of guests do that." "You're good," I smiled back. I had learned that setting boundaries isn't defiance, it's self-respect. That afternoon, we met at a seafood restaurant by the beach. Everyone was there. Melissa showed up with Josh and the boys, and for the first time, she brought a hired nanny, a young woman named Ava. She was cheerful, energetic, and clearly professional. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything to me. "Thank you for coming," Melissa said, her voice neutral. "No strings attached?" I nodded. Maybe, just maybe, something had changed. Throughout the evening, no one mentioned last year. No one asked me to take the kids to the bathroom or help feed them. I sat next to Dad, telling him about a design project I was working on for a boutique hotel. He listened attentively, as if what I said finally mattered, just as much as anything Melissa had ever said. When dinner ended, I quietly returned to my hotel. No one followed me. No one held me back. When I opened my room door, I felt something I'd dreamed of for years. True peace. On day 2 of the trip, I woke up in my quiet hotel room. Soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. I made coffee, turned on some light music, and sat on the balcony with a book I had just bought. For the first time in years, my vacation didn't begin with someone yelling my name down a hallway or kids pounding on my door. After the hotel's breakfast buffet, I got a text from Mom. "We're heading to the seaside park this afternoon. Want to join?" I replied simply, "I'll come by later if I finish up on my end." No promises, no pressure. Most importantly, no guilt. At around 10:00 a.m., I visited a local art gallery I'd wanted to see since last year. I wandered through the paintings, studying each brushstroke. For the first time, I felt like this vacation truly belonged to me. Just as I was leaving the gallery and planning to grab coffee by the beach, my phone buzzed. It was Ava the nanny Melissa had hired. "Hi, Julia. I'm sorry to call, but Melissa asked me to see if you could watch the boys for about 15 minutes. She said it's urgent." I didn't answer right away. A chill ran down my spine as the familiar unease crept back into my chest. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Ava, I think you're great," I said slowly, my voice calm but firm. "But I'm not the babysitter. If Melissa has something urgent, she should have planned ahead or made other arrangements." Ava hesitated for a moment. "Yes, I understand. I'm just doing what she told me to." "That's okay," I replied. "You're doing your job. Thanks for calling." I hung up and immediately texted Josh. "Your sister's trying to pass the kids off to me again." This time, through Ava. 2 minutes later, Josh called. His voice couldn't hide his frustration. "Thank you for telling me. I'll take care of it." That afternoon, when I showed up a little late to the seaside park, the energy had shifted. Melissa didn't look at me. Josh was off playing soccer with the boys. Mom came over holding a lemonade and said quietly, "We heard about what happened earlier." "I'm sorry, Melissa should have known better." I simply nodded. I wasn't here to keep arguing. I was here to live true to myself while the family rested under the shade of the trees. Melissa finally spoke up. No sarcasm, no complaints. Just a simple sentence. "Thank you for not making a scene earlier." I looked at her calm and steady. "I don't need to raise my voice for someone to realize what shouldn't be done. I've said enough." Josh nodded silently, a quiet confirmation. And from that moment on, no one ever asked me to help with the kids again. The following days passed peacefully. I took walks alone, visited seaside cafes, and even befriended a local artist who invited me to join her outdoor painting session when the family had group activities dinners, the aquarium visit, or a beach barbecue. I joined on my terms, enjoyable, never forced. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving my family's expectations. I was finally living for myself. I wasn't avoiding them, but I also wasn't allowing myself to be pulled back into an old role. The final day of our vacation arrived, and the whole family gathered on the beach, the sunset casting golden light over the waves. For the first time, Melissa sat next to me, not glued to her phone, not chasing after the kids. "You've really changed," she said softly. "And I think I'm starting to learn to accept that." I smiled without saying anything. I knew that real change doesn't come from promises. It comes from saying no firmly, even when it's misunderstood. This vacation wasn't perfect, but it was the first time I felt truly free around my family. Not because they completely changed, but because I did first, and I held my boundaries. After the trip, I returned to my design studio, slipping back into my usual rhythm. Everything settled into routine, but deep down, I knew something had shifted for good. Not just for me, but for my family too. One weekday afternoon, while organizing drafts for a hotel project, I got a short email from Josh titled "Update on Melissa." I opened it, not expecting what I read in the first few lines. "I took Melissa to her first therapy session this morning. It wasn't easy, but she didn't react like she used to. She listened." Josh continued sharing that the therapist had said something that left both of them speechless. "Being a mother doesn't mean losing your personhood. but it also doesn't give you the right to make others carry your responsibilities. According to Josh, Melissa had cried through half the session when she realized how she had used motherhood as a reason to control those around her, especially him. At the end, Josh wrote, "I'm sorry it got this far, but thank you. If you hadn't stood your ground." Melissa might never have looked at herself. I didn't reply right away, not out of coldness or anger, but because I needed a quiet moment to absorb something rare, a glimpse of growth from the very person who used to make me feel invisible. 2 weeks later, Melissa texted me asking if I'd have lunch with her. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the park where she used to take the kids. No children, no interruptions. She arrived on time for the first time in years, with no requests, no complaints. I've been to 4 sessions so far, Melissa began. And each time I realize I've never really listened to anyone. Not Josh, not Mom and Dad, and especially not you. I let her speak. I think being the oldest and growing up as the only adult in the house for a while, I got used to thinking everything should revolve around me. When I had kids, I panicked, and instead of asking for help the right way, I just expected it, especially from you. I nodded lightly. I understand, I said, but then added, but understanding doesn't mean accepting, and you shouldn't have accepted it. Melissa's voice softened, and she gave a sad smile. Josh hired a full-time nanny last week. Ava will help with school runs and teach the kids basic life skills. I'm not asking for your help anymore. I just hope one day you'll see that I'm changing. I looked at her for a long time. I saw the tiredness, but none of the old pride. Instead, there was something real humility. The clarity that comes after being overwhelmed for too long. From that day on, things started flowing in a new direction, slowly but steadily. Mom called me weekly, but always began with, "Are you free?" Not, "Can you help me with something?" Dad started sending me pictures of the garden bench he'd built himself instead of asking me to do it for him. As for Melissa, she was still relearning how to be just a sister, not a commander. Sometimes the old instincts came back, and I knew how to hold the line now. She was learning to stop before crossing it. I kept the healthy distance not to stay away, but because I was rebuilding a bridge. One with stronger supports, clearer boundaries, but wide enough for both sides to meet, if we both chose to walk across. When fall arrived, I received a handwritten card from Melissa. It was simple, just one sentence. "Thank you for helping me see what I couldn't see." Before I read it slowly, feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was progress. And for the first time in years, I believed it might be the beginning of something real. Written in the familiar, rounded handwriting I remembered from high school, the card read, "Thank you for not staying silent forever." I held it for a long time. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I knew this wasn't the end of the story. But at least from now on, I wouldn't be the only one listening without being heard. And that, for me, was a beautiful beginning to any kind of change. About a month after coming back from vacation, I received an unexpected message on Instagram. It was from Emily, the woman who worked at the little bookstore on the corner where I often spent my weekends. "Hi, Julia. I don't know if it's coincidence or fate, but I read that Reddit post and I knew it was you." My heart skipped a beat, not from shame, but because I never expected someone from my real life to connect with a story that began with frustration and ended with self-reckoning. Emily had always caught my attention, not because she was flashy, but because of the way she patiently introduced each book with a gentle smile, always kind, never superficial. It was as though she could see right through people without needing many words. I replied. I guess that post traveled further than I thought. She messaged back almost instantly. It did because it was real and because so many people have been, Julia, in their own families, but never found the words. We made plans to meet the following weekend at an outdoor art exhibit downtown. Nothing formal. Just two people walking side by side, talking about art books and the boundaries everyone should learn to set early on. I didn't tell Emily how many sleepless nights I'd spent because of a careless comment from someone in my family. But I did share how I once learned to stay silent and how I finally had to relearn how to speak up. She listened without judgment and said something I'll never forget. "You're not selfish, Julia. You're just loving yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that." That's how my relationship with Emily began slowly. No pressure, no rush, no need to heal each other, just presence, listening, and mutual respect. As for my family, things were moving in the right direction in their own way. Melissa continued therapy, and our conversations were no longer tense. One time, she even sent me photos of watercolor paintings she did in an art class. Instead of controlling, I'm learning to let go. Josh became more involved with the kids now. Every weekend he took them out on his own, giving Melissa time to breathe or just be herself for a bit. My parents, they've learned something powerful from my long silence. They don't send messages saying, "Can you help anymore?" Instead they say, "If you'd like to join us for dinner, we'd be happy to see you." It may seem small, but to me, it's a whole new way of breathing. In a relationship that used to suffocate me. I still keep my own room. Whenever I visit, I still say no when I'm tired, and I still choose peace over pleasing everyone. One early autumn night, Emily leaned against my shoulder on the wooden bench in my backyard, the porch lights casting a soft glow around us. She turned and asked, "Do you think your family really gets it now?" I smiled and squeezed her hand. They don't have to understand everything, as long as they respect it. And this time, I think they finally do. My story isn't a miracle. There's no dramatic transformation, no tearful finale where everything's fixed. But it's a real journey, where I learned to stand my ground and learned how to love others by first being kind to myself. If someone asked me what changed a deeply rooted family dynamic after all those years, I'd simply say I stopped saying yes to things that broke me, and I started living like I was worth it. My story isn't just about reclaiming the right to rest. It's a reminder that prolonged silence can become a burden. I used to be the easy one in the family until I learned that love shouldn't come with unconditional sacrifice. Today, I have my own life, a healthy relationship, and a family that's slowly learning to love without control. I'm no longer the free babysitter. I'm myself, whole and independent. What do you think about Julia's journey? Was she too firm, or did she finally do the right thing to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and personal boundaries.